Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 408th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have Mr. Mike Mark. We're going to get into the Hollywood sales method, hire top sales talent with this process. So pretty cool. The dude hit me up, and I liked his approach. I'm a member of his group. Smart dude. And we get into it. I link to his private group in the show notes. So you are in for a treat with this episode. We get into high-end salespeople, how to pay them, should you take a resume, what to look for. Some pretty good stuff if you are in sales and you're listening to the Sales Podcast because you're in sales. All right. If you want to have the best year of your sales career, check out 30daysalesgrowth.com. I've made some changes. I added a 6-month option that gives you a discount. I gave a 12-month option that gives you a bigger discount, as well as a private consultation with me. And the program, the 12-month program, is still less expensive than what I paid for a 12-week course back in 2005, early 2006. And that course changed my life. And I'd already been making at least $100,000 a year for 7 years before that point. So, what's $100,000 today? I don't know. I mean, I did the math a while back. In 99, so what was it, 98 to 99, I had a 12-month period there starting around April or May. I made exactly $100,000. And today that's worth about $150,000. I used the inflation adjuster thingamabop a while back. So, if I were to do a 6-week course that I paid if I were to do a 12-week course at $600, I'd have to charge not quite a 50% bump. So let's say $800 for 12 weeks, right? But I'm giving you 52 weeks for less than even the inflation adjusted. I want to eliminate price as an issue. Okay, I want you to engage and grow your sales. That's why I'm keeping this affordable. I've raised the price a little bit. I'll raise it a little bit over time as this builds momentum. But I would truly do this for free. But you only will apply yourself if you are investing in yourself. If I give you the lessons for free, they'll have no value. You won't apply them. You won't grow. Okay, so I got to charge. But it's not much. 30daysalesgrowth.com. I guarantee you the monthly amount you'll invest in this program is less than what you spent on appetizers and drinks last weekend. So invest in yourself, all right? You'll be glad you did. 30daysalesgrowth.com. Go there and then come back to listen to this episode. Mike Mark, so anxious to be on this podcast. You came in a week early, man, all the way from Tampa. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. I just couldn't stay away.
That was awesome. So, man, what are you doing here? Psychology and persuasion success for entrepreneurs and sales pros. So, really? Are you a psychologist, or do you just play one on TV?
I play one on TV. That's why I wear the glasses. I don't actually have a degree, but they just make you look smart. So.
Hey, welcome to 49, brother. I got reading glasses. I got my bifocals over. I think they're trifocals. Actually, good grief. Don't even get me started. But hey, if I wear glasses, it'll make me look smarter. But you know what? Interesting side note. Glasses do make you appear more trustworthy. They have done studies. You will actually get a higher closing percentage from the stage if you put glasses on.
I had a sales manager who had no need for glasses, and he would always wear them, and he'd take them and he'd use them as his prop. He'd look at you right there and put them back on, or he'd be sitting there and he'd pull them just out of his nose, look like that.
Were they just glass?
Yeah, they're just glasses. No prescription, no magnification, no nothing. It's just a prop.
Hey, I've always told people, look, life is a game, right? Sales is a game. Life is one big play that slowly unfolds. Sales, it's performance art, right?
Yeah.
But I always say, rookies practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. When you look at, Cats or Hamilton or, any of these big Broadway shows that run and run forever. And I've told this story. I got to meet the band Chicago, the lead singer, Jason Sheff. I met him at an Infusionsoft conference, and he's an entrepreneur. He bought my book, and he gave us backstage passes when they came to town. Some of the original dudes are like in their 70s, right? They've been singing Saturday in the Park since 1972, I think. But they sound just like the radio, the album, the CD, the streaming audio, whatever it is now. It was easy back in the day. We'd say, man, you sound just like the album. Now, does someone sound like the MP3? Right? Are you a millennial? You look like a millennial.
I would classify as a millennial, yeah.
So what do you say, man? Like if you saw your favorite like musician, do you say, dude, you sound just like your Spotify? Is that what you say?
I would say like the record, to be honest.
Oh, you do?
I would, yeah.
Have you ever owned a record? Be honest.
I have. I actually used to collect records. I made hip hop beats when I was in school. And
nice.
So yeah, digging into crates.
I wish I'd have kept mine, but I did not. Oh, well. But I digress. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Psychology. People are very predictable, aren't they?
Yeah. Once you learn the basic principles, it's pretty easy to play the game and, and move behavior to where you want it to go. It's pretty fun.
How did you learn these principles? Being a young millennial.
Trial and error. A lot of trial and error. So, basically what happened for me was I started in timeshare, and my dad told me that, you got to learn how to sell if you want to ever like run a business. And so I was like, okay, well, where can I learn how to sell? I thought, well, if there's a place where someone tells you, I don't want to buy this thing right at the very beginning, and then 90 minutes later, they're buying a $20,000 product in one presentation, it's probably a good place to learn. And so, yeah, that's where I got my start. And then eventually just like the ethics of it didn't work for me. Right. I always felt like I was losing. I'd get a deal and I felt like a loser because I didn't do the right thing. And then I didn't get a deal, and because I didn't get a deal, I was a loser. So it was just like, there's a lose-lose situation for me. And I decided that, you know what, if that's what it is, I'd rather not do it.
Right. Yeah, we've sat through a few presentations on timeshares, and they do make it seem very appealing. But man, then you find these resale websites, like you can buy the thing for $1. Right? It's like, yeah, I think I'll do that. But what did that teach you? Because they are very prescriptive, right? You're not allowed to vary from that process, are you?
No, everything was a really strict script, and you had to stick to it. And for them, it was more a numbers game, and they know their product, they know their ideal audience, so they tend to respond the same way. There were some times where you just swear the other person has the other half of the script. It's like, gosh, this is crazy. But I think that like where it got fun was when I started using it, the principles. And like for me, I read the script, and then what I was looking at was like, what's the NLP behind the script? Like, why are they saying what they're saying? And I was studying a lot of other stuff and then trying to break down the actual script itself, and then playing with the principles in totally different settings, like trying to convince a friend that we should go to a place or go do something, or trying to, convince a girl to go out on a date, or things like that, like where you have to sell your agenda, but in a different format. And that's when it like got really fun. And once you understand the principles and you can improv them, that's where I really like it. And I like for me, the creative deals where you're negotiating things that you haven't negotiated, or in markets you haven't negotiated, like that's, I have a lot of fun now because that's where the creativity of the process comes into play.
Right. I always tell people, you have to follow the rules and master the rules so you can break them well. That's it. Right. And so, but I love what you're saying, because I tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, practice engaging with people at Starbucks, at the grocery store. What I tell them is, when you fly home, do your best to have a conversation with the person sitting next to you without making a statement, right? Just ask questions the whole time and see how it goes, right? Because once they master that, it's life-changing.
Have you ever seen 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Bits and pieces of it.
There's a scene where he picks a girl up in the bookstore and he's like, yeah, you don't actually answer her question. You just answer her question with a question. And she's like, so what's your name? He's like, what's your name? She's like, oh.
Well, that does work. It can work. It can also be irritating to somebody.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But because you can change it around a little bit. Because ideally, you see, she started. Right. Whereas if he'd have started it, hey, what's your name? Oh, it's a lovely name. Is that a family name? Right. You can go, oh, where's your family from? You know, and oh, you immigrated. Oh, you're third generation. Fifth, you know, oh, wow. So you can take them through that very conversationally. And they never know that you're basically playing a game. But when you get off the plane, they're like, I don't know a thing about you, but it was so great sitting with you. I don't even know your name, right? It's a 2-hour flight. Yeah. And it's like, they're just engrossed in themselves.
Yeah. It's like that old dinner party principle, right? It's the person that, you know, you talk for 80% of the time. And it's like, God, that guy is so interesting.
And you didn't say anything.
Nope.
Just let them ramble on. So have you found that? I mean, is that the same in sales?
I think it's a balance, right? Like everybody likes to be in a dialogue, really. And there's an imbalance if someone feels like you're pulling the information out of them all the time.
Sure.
And so it's that give and take and the ebb and flow of the conversation. Interestingly, like, so I've played with some like pretty advanced call recording softwares. Like, I don't know if you know, like Gong or Chorus. I mean, you're of all people, I assume you know Gong.
Yeah, I've had them both on the podcast. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. So when you look at Gong, it's pretty interesting. Like I noticed that like 60-40 or like 51-49, that was kind of the split where it worked the best. And right. Like when you get into that 80-20, you're like too far. Right. And so, yeah, it's that 60-40 was really the sweet spot where we noticed a lot of conversations and deals would happen. Right. And it's because the prospect's talking 60% of the time, salesperson's talking about 40% of the time, but there's that enough give and take that it feels fair.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I used to always say that, you know, whoever's asking the questions is in control of the conversation. And that's true, but it can feel like an inquisition. Right. Yep. So, and actually speaking with Chris a couple of years ago, really highlighted that. And when I think back to it, like when you catch up with old friends, you do ask questions of one another. What's going on? How's the family? Blah, blah, blah. What have you been up to? But then you also share stories. Right. So, and it's those shared stories that help you bond.
Yep.
Right. And so, but like, if I just met you as a prospect, what stories can I share with you?
Are you asking me that as a question or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was hypothetical.
You know, because we're talking about like in this give and take. I mean, do you have some examples, or is it you kind of pick up what they're saying and kind of run with it?
It depends on what segment of the call you're in, right? Because or what segment of the conversation. The way that we map things out is we map it out as what we call the Hollywood sales method. So most of our stuff's inbound sales, and there's really 3 acts to the play. So the first act is going to be like the discovering of the desire. The second act is where you present your solution or the build the belief section. And the third part is like the overcoming resistance, handling logistics, and figuring out next steps. And so it depends on which segment of that you're in. But in the very first segment is where most of that trust and connection and bonding is going to occur. And usually what I find works best, and like, because what we specialize really in is building sales teams and training this to people. And the thing that works the best is basically saying what they're saying back to you, but not parroting it. So like normally people will tell you to parrot what they say, which is just say the same thing that they say.
Parrot what they say?
Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to get frustrated because it just feels like you're just not being heard or listened
You're going to
to.
get frustrated? All right, I'll quit.
No, exactly. I mean, that's what a lot of like the novice people do. But if you take what they said and then you use new metaphors or different analogies, then they feel understood, right? So if they're like, yeah, it's just like this feast or famine cycle that's so frustrating, and you're like, okay, it seems like I'm understanding what you're saying. It's just that like roller coaster income is really what's like frustrating you right now and getting you to the point where it's just like enough's enough. Like,
Right.
yeah, exactly. And one of the things that like usually what we look for is when we are going to say something back to someone, there's like a combination of words where usually if they say like, exactly, you nailed it, spot on, that's it, that's right. Like those are going to be things where people are saying like, I feel understood. And when you can say that, and it's not about you, it's about them, but it's like in different words than what they're saying, or adds some new perspective or analogy, then it really allows them to feel like, wow, this guy's getting it. He understands me and I'm safe and I feel comfortable in this conversation.
So how much of this, for you, and let's say just for an average or typical salesperson, how much of this is natural versus learned? Did you go through a long time like ramping up to really make this become second nature?
Yeah, it was a lot of practice, but it's also really natural. Like it's hard because I think that like if we look at Michael Phelps, for example, like Michael Phelps anatomically is designed to be an Olympic swimmer, but it also took years of training and practice to also be an Olympic gold medalist swimmer. So I think that in our experience, so we do a lot of recruiting sales reps. So typically we'll talk to like a couple hundred reps or more in the average week. And we run personality assessments on everyone. And we found there's a certain sweet spot of a personality. Oftentimes we look to, as well as like, were their parents or family members in sales? Because they'll pick up the language just almost off of instinct. Like a lot of my friends that I grew up with that are the best salespeople I know in their spaces, and they quickly go into an organization and become a top producer. Their parents are sales reps as well, or were sales reps or sales leaders or things like that. And so they just kind of come by it honestly, but then you have to take that raw material and put it into a system with practice and consistency and execution and discipline over a long period of time to like really get them to ramp up.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, my kids, they're beasts. My second son is 21 and he's an absolute monster. He sells cars just on his own. Like he'll buy them and rehab them and flip them and makes a ton of money. And he negotiates like I'm cringing. I'm like, dude, take that deal. He's like, oh, he's pushing it and he gets it. I'm like this proud dad, like my son just hit a grand slam home run, right? But I'm like, it's even better because this is a life skill. He can use, like he's just scratching the surface, right? So whoever hires him, going to be crazy. Like, and my wife, I mean, 24 years today we've been married. Man, she rattles stuff off because she's just been sitting in the car with me for 24 years, hearing me wander the house, doing deals. And you're right. They just pick it up. But can you ask that on an interview? Because I know people are so picky now. They're like, you're judging me. You're asking illegal questions and you get some lawsuit because you asked them what their favorite color was or something.
Yeah, you don't necessarily ask it directly. You come about it kind of obliquely. And when they volunteer the information, it's just something you take into consideration. It's not an absolute decision point, but normally they'll tell you like what their family's life was like and how they learned their skills or what they grew up around in an environment. And then it allows you to know just the raw material that you're working with. Yeah.
And so are you training salespeople to go out on their own, or do people come to you to outsource their sales and then you manage the salespeople?
So people normally come to us like our bang on dream client and just kind of like the person that we know we can serve and just take them and make them love us and everything like that. Typically they're going to be at like 30 to 50 grand a month. they're an entrepreneur taking all their own sales calls. And usually it's going to be some form of like agency or coaching products or service provider, somewhere in that space. And then they'll have like good lead flow. They can convert their calls, but they just can't build the business because they're spending all day on a sales call. And from there, what we do is it's almost like a marketplace model, right? How like, Airbnb finds people who need accommodations and people who have accommodations and pair them up. We do that, but with basically we find 4 7-figure sales reps in 7 days or your money back, and we deliver those people to the person desperately looking to get off the phones. And then from there, some of them will want help with ongoing in terms of like how to ramp up, train, coach their sales rep, and we'll help them with that. Other people, they already have teams, they already have a sales manager or a director of sales in place, and they just need the talent, and then they can plug them into their own system. And so it depends a little bit on their setup, but most people will take us up on the training and coaching.
Gotcha. So you'll find them 4 candidates in a week.
Yeah. Well, really, so we find way more than that. We talk to 200 reps for 4 candidates, and then we just shortlist it to basically who we feel like is the best fit on a values, culture, and background basis for what they need.
Right. So do you do a lot of interviewing of your clients, like to figure out that vibe?
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with the actual market that they serve, right? Because one of my big principles is, it comes from Nelson Mandela. He says that if you speak to a man in a common tongue, you speak to his mind. If you speak to a man in his native tongue, you speak to his heart. And that to me is like huge. And I want someone to be able to natively speak the language of the prospect. And when I talk about the language of the prospect, I'm talking about, if we're talking to a lawyer, they need to be able to speak law. Or if we're talking to an accountant, they need to be able to speak accounting and finance and the jargon that comes with that professional territory. And so once someone can speak the native jargon, then it makes the whole sales process and training it a lot easier.
So how do you find these top people? I mean, my experience has been top people are usually gainfully employed. You know, the good ones aren't just sitting around waiting for the phone to ring for somebody to offer them a job. So are you like a headhunter, or, I mean, or like, how are people making this switch, to find those good ones?
Yeah. And that's actually a really good question. And also one of our core principles as well. It's like, good salespeople don't need jobs, right? Because an interview process is a sales process. And if they could sell their way into a job. So they're almost never not without a job. So that being the case, we have to do what's called passive recruiting. So we find someone who's already got a job, already a top producer, but there's some pain point that they have. And we run like massive amounts of marketing for sales reps, right? So just like normal people run marketing for their customers, we run marketing for sales reps all the time. And we're looking for like the specific sweet spot of like, maybe they're frustrated with their boss, they hate their commute, they hate wearing a uniform. Like, there's something about the environment or the process of what they're doing. Maybe they're selling a product that they don't truly believe in. And it's one of those things. That's it, right? Like, you can find a lot of, and we actually do find plenty of people from timeshare. Or if they're out and about and like the mechanics. So we found a guy in solar, and he was upset with the way that his schedule works. They let him know at the last minute, and people can cancel right away. And he's got to drive an hour here and then 2 hours back the other way. And that was his pain point. And so we're finding these frustrations that they have about their current lifestyle or job. And then our offers are just simply better, right? Like, they make a lot of money. They get to work from anywhere with an internet connection for the most part, mostly US time zones. So because we're able to present them with a better offer, then they'll hear us out. And then once we present the offer, like, well, shoot, this makes sense. Why not?
Right. And what is a typical offer for a salesperson? Because I probably need you right now, but I've always been too picky, and it's tough too. I'm selling sales training, right? So they've got to be good. Whereas, if I'm selling security systems, well, they can ramp up a little bit, right? And you don't have to be a great salesperson. If they're not a great salesperson, it doesn't reflect the same on a securities company versus a sales training company. You know what I mean?
Totally. And the other thing I think that what you're picking up on and feeling is there's a big difference between what we call a sophisticated buyer and an unsophisticated buyer. So an unsophisticated buyer, and we have this whole training on this where basically there's indicators of sophistication. A lot of it is going to be like where they're from geographically. Someone in New York City, New York, is going to have encountered more selling situations or buying situations than someone who's in rural Kansas. They're simply not exposed to as many buying and selling situations. And then another part of it is going to be socioeconomics. So people try to sell people with money more stuff than people who don't have money. Part of it's going to be education. Part of it's going to be personality profiles and like careers. So some people are weighted more analytical, like an engineer or an accountant, whereas other people are more feely, like a nurse or a teacher. And so based on their personality profiles, their job history, their education background, geographically where they're from, as well as age, that's going to be another big factor, age. So the older you are, the more houses you bought, the more cars you bought, the more selling environments you've been in, the more you understand the game. And so when you sell to someone who's on the more sophisticated end of the spectrum, it's actually a very different sale than selling to someone on the low end of the sophistication spectrum. And like door to door, you could just pound the numbers and security systems, oftentimes you're going to be dealing with relatively unsophisticated buyers. Whereas with your people, they're going to be at the high end of sophistication. They're going to be normally salespeople themselves, sales managers themselves, or entrepreneurs. They are probably going to be higher earners. They're probably going to be really driven, pretty analytical people overall. And so you're just on that different end of the spectrum. And you do need a different person to be able to speak to that market than the person who's going to talk to a starter, say, or someone selling a fitness offer where it's like a weight loss product. Totally different markets, totally different people, totally different language. And so we would look at that and consider that and take that into account as we find the people to pair up for the specific offer.
Yeah. So how do you pay someone like that? I've literally never had a W-2 employee. I've had full-time contractors, but I paid them as contractors. But salespeople, ideally you're paying them on commission, but yep. I recognize it's going to take a little while for someone to ramp up. So how do you balance that? Because great salespeople are coin operated.
Normally, most of our setups are going to be in terms of 100% commission. The only times that are not is when they're actually more on the low end of sales roles, like an appointment setter or something like that. But at the higher end, like a pure, what you'd call an AE or a closer, they work on commission strictly. And it's typically going to be a 1099 setup. The biggest thing it comes down to is just when they're hitting KPI at full-time workload, it's about what's their on-target earnings. And then we can reverse it all from on-target earnings. So typically they got to be at like a minimum of if they're terrible, they should make $8,000 a month. If they're good, they should make $10,000 a month. And if they're kicking butt, they should make 15 to 18 is going to be kind of the window of that, really highly talented. I've been around the block. I know how to close, done millions in deals, and I'm looking for something like this. That's going to be the place that they want to land.
And are they looking at the total commission or, the commission rate or just what they earn, right? Because, obviously if you're selling a smaller deal, you need to be giving them a lot more leads or a bigger cut, versus if you're selling a $100,000 solution, maybe they're happy with just 5% of that deal, if they can sell a few of those a month, or are they looking at, I want 20% commission. You know what I mean?
The actual percentage of commission almost always goes out the window once we start talking on target earnings. As
Right.
long as on target earnings make sense, that's really the key. And it, yeah, like there's going to be, if it's say a lower end product, like a $3,000 product, they're going to just need a lot more deal volume.
Right.
And then there's going to be other higher end products where it's like, they could get a few pops in a month and then they still hit their goal, but they still got to work those. And usually those are longer sales cycles and it's not just a one call close, a lot of that. But yeah, it's like for them, salespeople will talk a big game and they'll have this huge like bark about the commissions, but then really their situation is like they will settle for whatever that right on target earnings is for them.
Right. And can you sort through the BSers pretty good? Because I know most salespeople, their resumes are more like creative writing assignments.
We actually don't use resumes at all. So that's not even a part of our process. And a big part of it is we do make everyone go through a role play.
Nice.
Prior to even introducing them. And like we test them, they don't get a script. They have to role play it. And I mean, like there's an emotional journey of the sale. A good person can lead you on the emotional journey of the sale. They can connect. They can apply enough pressure without making you feel awkward or making you feel like you're being antagonized. And when you see that, you just kind of know, all right, we're dealing with the right caliber person here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why companies need you, because most people can't interview for crap. They end up selling the salespeople and why they should come work for them instead of like really interviewing them. It's crazy.
Yeah. And what you're saying is true. Like the problem that most people have as well when they do it without someone like us is that they onboard one salesperson and then they give that person maybe 60, 90 days of training. And then they find out it doesn't work out. So they're back at the drawing board and they onboard one person and they lose 9 months to a year just cycling through bad salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we have a whole system where it's like, we got salespeople for days. We can pull them in a heartbeat. And then typically we'll trial anywhere from 2 to 3 and we'll take like one full-time load and split it between them. And we're split testing them just like you'd split test a headline in an advertisement to find the winner.
Right.
And so we're crunching down the whole learning cycle so that like they know they have a 30-day trial. They got to make it work in 30 days or else it's not going to be continued. And you put them all up against each other. They also, you have a baseline of comparison. Most people will just test one salesperson. There's no baseline of comparison.
Right.
So it's just a matter of like crunching down that learning and then being able to have the options that makes it really easy when it comes time to ramp.
Do you see, do both salespeople often work out or is it usually a clear cut one or the other?
It happens both. Like I love it when we get both people to work out because then we can scale even faster. And it's just a matter of like what the business can handle in terms of cash flow and advertising usually to ramp. But it happens both ways. Like I'd say probably about 30% of the time, it's roughly both people will work out. And then the other 70% of the time, we got to just cut them and then keep one.
Yeah. Because obviously if they're commission only, you can afford to keep them on a little longer, but there's opportunity costs there. If they're not getting deals done, then it's costing you money.
That, and also most of our people are spending money in advertising. And so there is actually still a real cost, even though they're commission only. It's like, you got to scale your ad spend. There is cash outflow going to support them. And so it's something that you just have to be mindful of when we're doing that process.
Yeah. Do people pretty much know CRMs now? Can they hop right in and use these things, for tracking? Because I don't want them keeping stuff in their phones, Google Docs. I want them using my system.
Yeah, it depends. Some people are more tech savvy than others. Usually when we get age does play a big factor in it. Like when you get people at a certain age, it's like more difficult to teach them. People at the younger age, it's easier to teach them. Certain softwares are easier than others too. Like Pipedrive's pretty intuitive for most people. Something like Infusionsoft or the Active Campaign, it's going to be a little bit clunkier and have a little bit more of a learning curve. So it does depend on the actual software itself. The HubSpot's relatively easy for sales reps to learn as well. So age and software itself would play a factor.
Right. So is it, I mean, how much of the onus is on me to teach them that versus like, hey, here's my platform, here's the online tutorials, show up to work, know how to log in and at least input some data?
I mean, the online tutorials, the reason we pay that much money for software as a service is because they do a great job usually of documenting and having the basics, of like, here's how to add a task in the deal in Pipedrive, or here's how deal stages work. But then each business is going to have its own way of using the tool, and they need to document that. And so that's kind of where that fine line exists. It's like, if you have a specific way that you want things done, then that's important for you to document and communicate to the team. But as long as most of these companies do a great job. They have so much in terms of like their help centers, whether it's Zendesk or Help Scout or something like that. And they got plenty of videos, plenty of walkthroughs. So,
yeah. So are you seeing things change with sales? I mean, are people still people? Is it, now you might text them, whereas before you had to fax them, right? But I mean, are the negotiations, the processes, the emotions still following the same kind of timeline or bell curve or, path that you've always seen?
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, like the parts of our brain that make the decisions are going to be the inner parts of the brain, what they'd call the croc brain. And, so what you're looking at is typically going to be that like nucleus accumbens where the serotonin, dopamine, and the norepinephrine are being released. And that's like the buying decision. The buying decision happens there more than anywhere. And so those parts of our brain are so old that technology is not going to really impact it,
So are you seeing much or working with folks with outbound calling, or is this primarily inbound?
Primarily inbound. Sometimes we'll have situations where like we get setters and they'll be able to, I'm a big believer of like, if you're gonna have people do outbound, don't have your closers do outbound. To me, it's just silly to have full cycle sales reps, because if you get a full cycle sales rep, that means they're not going to be a good closer, because anyone who's a good closer doesn't want to do full cycle. They'll normally just want to show up, take the qualified opportunities and convert them into cash in the bank. And so I'm a big believer of like, you take the two, you separate the two, and they're also totally different pay scales. Like a setter, they don't need to make nearly as much money as a closer. And I want the closer's time as efficient as possible. And so like that Henry Ford whole process of, separating the roles, creating that workflow, and then accelerating the pipeline, that's what I like to do. And that comes from, we can have setters, but asking a closer to be a setter and a closer is usually pretty silly.
Yeah. And what do you consider outbound? Like if I get a lead that fills out a form and then my sales guy calls them back, do you consider that inbound or outbound?
I'd consider that outbound.
Okay.
Yeah. And the better way to put it is because it's not necessarily like what typically would be outbound, because outbound's more so considered cold outreach.
Right.
And that would be a warm outreach, but outreach is kind of what I'm thinking in terms of outbound. If that you're doing the dialing and initiating the conversation, that would be what I would consider like an outreach. Whereas most people are going to be doing, like if they're high-end closers, they have a calendar full of appointments, they show up, they talk to those appointments and then turn them into deals. And then they go to the next appointment, turn that into a deal. And then they just cycle through those people. And then they keep maybe a list of 7 to 10 of the hottest ones that they had in their pipeline in front of them. So they stay on top of those people and then keep getting them to pop in.
So interesting. Because I mean, I got started in 97 and it was pure outbound, right? I mean, just brutal true old-fashioned cold calling, before
Smile
social
and dial, baby.
smile and dial, right? And so if I was given a lead, right, like what, like, you mean this year somebody was interested, this month, this today, somebody filled out a form today and I can call them? I'm like, oh my goodness, I was so happy, right? So will the salespeople push back on that? Do they literally just want to have automated links and they just show up and talk?
Yeah. I mean, with advertising, it's silly not to do that. Like another big belief that we have is that, it's a lot easier to hire a robot to do a person's job. Like given the choice between a robot or a person, I choose a robot if they can do the job equally well. And so with advertising, in a lot of ways, like you can run advertising and VSLs and like the whole system's automated, just booking appointments. And that typically functions even better than having outbound reps. And it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to do that than to pay an outbound rep and then try to manage them as well.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't consider that outbound, but I know it's outbound to me is just cold prospecting.
Yeah.
Versus following up with a lead that filled out a form, because I've built my business now. I mean, yeah, they fill out forms and I make them jump through hoops because I'm not going to talk to them unless they fill out everything. All right. Because I'll give them a free consultation, but I want to make sure they're legit. So I feel like I could make it a little bit simpler for people to raise their hand. Because I mean, I've been hit up by these like LinkedIn people and, high ticket closers, we can get you these people, and I'm like, if I got my ads dialed in and people just call and it's a one call close, I'm like, why do I need a salesperson? Right? I know how to do a one call close.
Yeah, but the team, the real reason that people want salespeople is when it goes from, well, you can do it, but your time is better spent being a CEO than taking a sales call. And you put a team of 3 people that do 80% as good as you, and you're at 2.4 times what you were doing by yourself. And then you either have your time back or you're CEOing and then, doing bigger stuff, whether that's a JV, building a new offer, entering a new market, things like that, where your time's even higher leverage than talking to a qualified prospect.
Or are salespeople pretty loyal? I mean, if they're in the right job, they're getting paid well, they stick around? Or, because I keep seeing things, people, they change jobs 12 times in their career, blah, blah, blah. What's the average life cycle I can expect for a sales rep?
The better way I put it is salespeople are lazy more than they are loyal. And what I mean by that is that if they're in a place where it's a good opportunity, it's a good company, they have a good product, the system's working well, they like the people, there's no reason to change. Right? It's like, it's comfortable, it's easy, it's good. They're making good money. They're doing what they want to do. They have time to spend with their family. And that's what they really care about. And if they're in a situation like that, the odds of them leaving are really low. The problem is that most people don't know how to actually build a team or a culture, right? And so they get mad at sales reps, or they get mad at really anybody in their company for taking a different opportunity when it's really their fault. Like we have, in a lot of cases on teams, people that are taking less money than they could make elsewhere because they really are connected to the mission, or they're connected to the vision, or they like the team and the environment that they get to work in. And so as a leader, like that, building a culture is so critical because that's the glue that keeps people there. And that's what keeps people sticking. And most people don't even spend a thought about what the purpose of the company is and creating a higher purpose of a company. They don't think about what the goal of the company is, the metrics and how they track that, how they support that person or de-hassle them. They don't think about, the meeting cadence so the person feels safe and they feel understood and they feel like this is a machine that's working consistently. They just don't think about that. And then they think like, oh, this person's just lazy, or they don't care, or when I did it, it was like this. It's like, well, great. That's your company. You're taking all the risk, but you have all the reward at that point. And they don't have that same thing, and they could just go get a job somewhere else. So why wouldn't they do that? Like, they have to be connected to something bigger. That's the key. And they have to, like, owners have to be consistent in their communication of the values. They have to be consistent in their like living of the values. They have to be consistent in making these people feel safe. All of that stuff's so important. And most people, when they're scaling, it's not even a thought. They're only thinking about revenue at that point.
So how do these remote salespeople on 1099 feel like they're part of something?
A consistent
Do I need
cadence.
to fly them in quarterly and smoke a peace pipe and go commune with nature and hug one another?
No, not at all.
Yes. All right. Good.
Yeah, we not even a little bit. So our team, like, our people love being on our team, and they'll tell us like, I feel so grateful to be here. Like, this is amazing. The environment's so great. And we've never even met them in person. We all work remotely, and it's just being consistent. That's the biggest thing. If you want to create trust, you just be consistent. You want to know the secret? Be consistent. That's it. And so when they can see that, and they know like, okay, at this time on this day, there's this meeting. On this time on this day, we have this meeting. This meeting is there always. We don't skip it because I don't feel like doing it. We don't skip it because I got something else to do. We do it because we've built a machine that's consistent, and it creates a safe space for people to know what's going to happen and to be able to communicate what needs to be communicated. Then they feel like, okay, this is great. And as long as the product's good too. Like, when people see the clients getting the results that they're promising them, it's a huge part of it.
So speaking of meetings, do you need to have meetings? Do you need to have regular meetings? Do salespeople, are they expecting that, or do they want to just be left alone to go sell?
They're not expecting it. They think they want to be left alone to sell, but without them, the things fall apart.
True. Very true. Cool, man. So what have I not asked you? I feel like we got kind of deep.
I know, it's fun. What have you not asked me?
You have a group, right? You have a private group?
We do have a private group.
Online, right?
Yeah, so our company is called coachingsales.com, and our group is pretty easy. It's just coachingsales.com/group. Pretty much in there, what we like to do is just talk about like general psychology and as it relates to persuasion and, success, and how to be able to grow. Because ultimately, like, I think that as well as anybody, once you hit a level of sales, true mastery of sales is just mastery of self. And
yep.
What it teaches you, it's just like anyone who's mastered a martial art and they gotten a black belt. It teaches you the discipline. It teaches you that self-mastery. It teaches you confidence. It teaches you belief. It teaches you all those things that spill over into every other area of your life and make you a more consistent, successful, well-rounded person. And, for me, I view sales as a gateway into that.
Yeah. I agree, man. Very cool. So let's give them the name of your group, shall we?
Yeah. So it's called the Psychology of Persuasion and Success for Entrepreneurs and Sales Pros.
That's
and
too long.
You could, yeah,
coachingsales.com/group, right?
That's it.
Coaching sales. That's a good name. When did you get that URL?
It was expensive.
Yeah.
We dropped a pretty penny on that one.
Yeah, that's a good name.
But yeah, we grabbed it fairly recently. We've done a rebrand and we've invested a lot into that. So
right, cool, very smart. Yeah, I know a guy. He bought some name. I think like $500,000.
Woo!
But it was worth it.
It's real estate.
It is, and I've bought my kids names for the last
cool.
22 and a half years. And that was 7 names I had to buy over these years. But now I've transferred ownership of 3 of them to my 22, 21, and 19-year-old. So slowly giving it back, and we shall see what they do with them. But like, you can't buy names anymore. you got to do like full names hyphen, .biz or whatever. So I hope they appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I had to do .me. I'm at mikemark.me because Mike Mark. I mean, how are you going to get that?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's cool though. I mean, that .me is good. Easy enough to remember.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I will direct everyone there. So coachingsales.com/group. And then, I guess from there, they can link to your website, or should they just start there? Do you have like a free report or something? Or just go to the group first and then find your other links from there?
Yeah, once you get in the group, I mean, there's tons of objection trainings in there. So like we do this thing where we'll have people throw out objections and give them new ways to handle it. So it's not like the same tired, I need to think about it. Well, what do you need to think about, sir? Like, it's not any of that stuff. It's all totally different stuff than people will have heard. And, I think a big part of the human mind is things need to be new in order for them to be interesting. And when you're dealing with sophisticated buyers, that's a part of it. So yeah, they could go through that. I'm pretty active on Facebook, so they can follow me and check out what we got going on. And if it resonates, awesome. If they're looking for a sales job, feel free to reach out. If they're looking for a killer salesperson, also feel free to reach out. And so those are really the ways that we can help.
I mean, are people connecting? Are you worried about that? Like they connect on the page and then you miss out on making the marriage?
No. You know why? Is honestly, people do it all the time, and then they go, shoot, that didn't work out. I think I need your help now. And then they actually end up being better clients because they realize why they need us, as opposed to when, you try and convince them why they need you.
Exactly.
Like, building a sales team is without a doubt one of the most complex problems that I've ever tried to solve in my life. And that's why I love it, is because if I'm not challenged, I'm bored. And yep. I wanted that really big challenge, and it's a really difficult problem. And most people totally underestimate it going into it. And then once they kind of like get that first smack of reality, that's when they'll come back with their hat in their hand, and they'll be amazing clients, and we get them awesome results.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly why like Home Depot or whatever teaches those free classes, right? At a minimum, you're going to buy your material from them, but then you're going to mess it up and you're going to come back and say, can I hire one of you all to come do this thing for me? It's like, because you're right. I don't want to mess around with somebody that thinks they want or can do it for free.
Yeah. If you do, be my guest.
I give them all the tools. Because if they do it for free, they're gonna tell somebody, man, Wes had this great program, and just go opt in and you'll get it. Okay, one of them is not going to be able to do it for free, and they'll become the client. So, yeah. All right, man. I like the way you think.
Likewise, it's been fun.
All right, man. Mike Mark, coachingsales.com/group. I will see you in January. If I'm going to swim Tampa Bay, the least you can do is come out and cheer me on. All right.
I'll at least cheer you on. We can have a beer at the finish line.
All right.
I'm not swimming in anything though.
And we do drink a few beers at the finish line. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming to the show. Have a great day.
All right, Wes. Thanks for having me.
Don't wear fake glasses, but do not be afraid to wear glasses if you do have them. I need them more and more. I got those trifocal kind of things. I don't know. I got the transition lenses. It's nice and convenient. I was carrying around 3 pairs of glasses, but I feel like they don't get light. They don't turn back to regular glasses quickly enough, or most places have outdoor light coming in, so it's like they stay dark. So I don't know. Probably got to get me some cool glasses, all the kids are wearing these days. But, hey, I hope you got a lot out of that, talking about the common tongue, how to find great salespeople, the passive recruiting model, how to pay salespeople versus appointment setters. We got into resumes, role playing. I'm a big fan of, not only in interviews, but even in your sales training with your staff. And we get into that in the 30-day sales growth program. Okay, come hang out. Let me help you cover the tough things in a safe environment, because there's some things that are too valuable, they're too costly to do on the job, and that's selling. All right, you can't be testing opening lines and negotiation, and how to reach decision makers. You can't be winging that. So come leverage my 22 plus years of sales experience, 13 years as an entrepreneur, multiple books, speaking around the world. Let me help you shorten that cycle. Okay. 30daysalesgrowth.com. And I'll share even more insight from this interview and plenty of others. Because I always talk beforehand and after with these folks. We swap emails ahead of time leading up to it. We don't always get into everything. I'm actually thinking about putting together a book of my interviews, pulling out the highlights. So that is on the to-do list coming up. But get those insights now, okay? 30daysalesgrowth.com. There's a 12-month option now. Saves you a couple of months, and you get a private consultation with me, which I don't offer, other than a 90-day coaching program at thousands of dollars. So avail yourself of that. All right, 30daysalesgrowth.com. I'll go sell something.